Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as always, Richard Kroll and Mark Weaver.
Mr. Weaver, you have a bit of an interesting look going today. Half rebel, half youngster, half professorial. You got the goatee working, the hat on backwards, and the glasses. So it's an interesting look for you.
Well, the hat on backwards I don't do often, and I haven't had a goatee in about 8 years or 10 years. My daughter, we did a family weekend at our beach house last weekend, and my daughter from D.C. said, "What is it, 2002?" And since the last time I had a goatee, I seem to have a lot more gray, if you haven't noticed, Rich. But at least it matches the hair on my head, the gray hair on the head. So anyhow, folks, welcome back. Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, and we have a great show planned. And by the way, we're taping late at night this time, and Rich and I are doing something different. We're sipping some Glenmorangie,
Glenmorangie, as I like to say.
Quinta Rubin.
One of my favorites.
As we are taping. So who knows where this could go. Richie, do you have any tips of the day for our listeners?
This one comes from my sister, Sadiqa, formerly known as Kristen, who's an extremely well-versed and experienced person about health and diet and meditation and peace of mind and yoga and aromatherapy and everything in it. She says, folks, do not drink anything while you're eating. So we all drink even ice. I have a cup of ice water every night with dinner, or whenever I have dinner, or you have a soda with your pizza. She says that the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is used to break the food down and burn it up quicker, is basically a flame being put out if you drink liquid, especially cold liquid, while you're eating, especially
including
certain foods.
Water?
Including water. So she says you're supposed to wait 30 minutes, eat your dinner, wait 30 minutes, because your body won't digest as well, won't process the food as well, and won't burn the calories as quickly.
Now, I'd be interested in Sadiqa's feedback on what I had always heard was that you should drink a glass of water 15 minutes before you eat dinner, and therefore you'll be less hungry and you will eat less. So I don't know if that's
also still a true fact about eating less, because if the more your stomach's filled up, the less it's going to take in more food, and the brain will register you being full. I don't know if that also puts the flame out for your stomach with digestion. So I'll ask her that one.
Ask her opinion on quality of podcast content with Quinta Rubin in your stomach. Because we're going to test that theorem.
It goes way up.
All right, folks, on our show today, Richie has some Idiot of the Week nominees. Then we're going to talk about self-awareness and how more of it can benefit you. And then we're going to conclude the show where Rich and I, with the help of our spouses, took a self-awareness quiz. So we're going to reveal the results of that and talk about them and have some fun. And I'm sure he's going to be busting on me. And maybe I'll do a little bit in reverse. I'm not as good at busting as he is. But should be fun. And by the way, it's just one self-awareness quiz, so it's probably not meant to be a comprehensive study of our self-awareness, but at least gives us some idea of our own self-awareness.
Yes, 14 questions over 4 minutes is not something that we have to call our local pastor about.
And by the way, folks, we need your support. Go to our supporting listeners page of our website, areweidiots.com. Go to the Patreon link, and we'd appreciate you becoming a platinum, gold, or silver patron. By the way, we haven't asked this in a while. Write us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at Are We Idiots Show. Richie, Idiot of the Week nominees, who you got for me?
I have two. The first one's fairly long because it's involved. So the second one's really short and to the point. So it'll offset each other as far as time-wise.
Go for it.
Recent polls indicate that up to 6% of Americans claim to have been abducted by aliens. Now, that sounds awful high to me. The extraterrestrials are often said to take their captives to their saucers, lay them out on a table, and extract sperm from the men and impregnate the women with alien sperm. Why would they do this? One theory is that aliens are in a reproductive bind on their home world, or home planet. They have come to Earth to use humans as incubators to spawn alien offspring.
Sure.
The other theory is that aliens are producing hybrid beings that will somehow help them take over the Earth. Scientists, of course, are dubious of such claims since there's never been any good evidence that the abductions are taking place. No one ever seems to bring along a cell phone or pocket an artifact from the saucers. Here's where it gets
Now it gets weird.
weird.
The hybrids not using incubators of humans. That's not weird.
It's all weird, but
Okay.
now we get to why someone's going to be nominated idiot.
Okay.
An instructor at the University of Oxford, Oxford, right?
Yeah.
One of the top 5 universities
Almost as
in
good
the
as
world.
Wharton, by the way.
What's that?
Almost as good as Wharton.
Not quite. University of Oxford professor believes the abductions are real. Young Hai Chi claims to know what the aliens have in mind. In lectures given at the university, he says they're creating alien-human hybrids as a hedge against climate change. To support his unorthodox theory, Chi notes that for several decades, the number of reported alien abductions has risen. He bases this statement on the work of David Jacobs, local retired Temple University historian who has published several books on UFOlogy and who runs the International Center for Abduction Research. Jacobs has interviewed more than 1,000 people using hypnotic regression that supposedly allows them to recall their encounters with aliens, although Jacobs himself admits that people should be skeptical of these recollections. Chi takes the claims as real and links the growing number of abductees cataloged by Jacobs to the increase in greenhouse gases.
Oh, my goodness.
The extraterrestrials are producing hybrids that can better withstand a hotter planet.
This guy's certifiably quacked.
Well, by the way, many other things, Mark, if you have been tracking, have risen during this time frame, including the price of sushi and the number of poisonous flies in Maryland. I came up with that. So, is there any connection there as well?
It's got to be. It's got to be a connection.
Now, Chi says the reason we don't see the aliens is that they are largely unrecognizable. The first-generation hybrids still have physical features distinctive to aliens, but they disguise themselves, he told NBC News in an email. But from the second generation on, they have almost indistinguishable bodily features from humans.
It's like Terminator. It doesn't
like
require a
Terminator.
shred of proof.
It's like Men in Black. So here, but here's why I may be going on board with this claim. Because you know what's pretty interesting, and I just got my genetic ancestry DNA test back,
Right.
and it said that I was 1.3% Klingon. So maybe this is real, Mark.
And you mentioned that you want to do a conspiracy theory show. I think this might be one of the
I'll have
nominees
you
for
know,
idiots.
my brother-in-law believes that this is one of the conspiracy theories that's happening. So we're going to give him his chance to voice his reasoning while we get to debate it.
All right, nominee number 2.
Number 2. A Florida man has been arrested for repeatedly calling 911, complaining that his wife had thrown out his beer and another woman had stolen his brewskis. This is great. Florida, too.
Florida, of course.
Officers called out to his home in West Palm Beach told Carlos Bueno Mir that the situation really was not an emergency.
Muy bueno.
Oh, bueno. That the situation really was not an emergency and to not call 911 again. But after they left, he phoned again, yelling at an operator that a woman had broken into 2 of his beers. Over the course of 4 hours, he phoned 911 7 times.
Oh, my goodness. They should throw this guy in jail.
Mr. Bueno Mir told cops on their second visit that a woman broke into his house and stole 2 of his brewskis. Bueno Mir now faces charges of misusing the 911 emergency system
Good.
and making false complaints.
Good. I don't like putting people in prison for no reason. This guy needs to be taught a message. Message. That's ridiculous. Then, what happens if someone really was hurt or shot or whatever, and God knows in Florida that could happen. He should be held accountable for that.
But these were double IPAs, I believe.
Okay. My ruling is as follows. Anyone who believes in all this alien stuff, I have empathy for. That guy is certifiably crazy. I don't know how is he teaching at Oxford, or was he just a student there?
He teaches Korean at Oxford, and he's doing lectures on UFOlogy.
Well, maybe he just wanted to get some free publicity because he's a wacko. And so therefore I can't give him an idiot because he's mentally ill, I believe. The guy in Florida who's obviously just a drunkard and could have caused a real problem and maybe denied people that truly need the 911 system, the police or an ambulance. He's the idiot of the week, and I don't even want to send him the $1, but I guess I have to. That's
You have to send him $1. But listen, if you take my Quinta Rubin away from me,
You're calling?
I might call. I was going to call 911, but now that I read that, I won't do it.
Good. All right, Richie. So for self-awareness, I thought I'd start out because we're going to have some fun at the end, but you're good at describing things. I thought this was very much emblematic of setting off our show. So for the listeners, why don't you describe what I gave you there to set up our segment?
So there's these SummiCard user cards, which are like little portraits you would hang on a wall, kind of like those motivational ones like risk and daring and
Right.
excellence.
Right.
And they're usually done with an old font, like from the 50s, and the characters are realistic looking, but also like 50s looking
Right.
to give it that nostalgic look. So it's a woman
Interviewer.
in a business suit, pulling off her glasses, taking down notes. And she's clearly taking off her glasses to look at you and make a comment. And she says, "Oh, you don't have any weaknesses? Excellent, because we really only like to hire people with no self-awareness." That's pretty good.
I thought that was a good way to
great.
start the segment because
That's awesome.
The reason I thought this might be a good idea to do a show on is that in my many years, I have witnessed many, many people, a high percentage of people that I've run into in my life who can't admit that they have weaknesses. And I'm not just talking about an interview because that's the quintessential interview question. What are your weaknesses? I tend to work too hard, or some non-weakness. But in life, I think people really struggle with admitting their weaknesses. And usually you're only aware of your weaknesses either through very high self-awareness or if other people tell you about them. Or if you're married, by the way. That's another way you're aware.
Very quickly, by the way.
So that was the reason that I thought it would be a good episode, is that a lot of people are not able to take criticism well, and they don't like to admit weaknesses. And I've always kind of looked at it as very pragmatically that everyone is born with a certain amount of strengths and weaknesses, and they're all over the map. Your weaknesses and strengths are different from my weaknesses and strengths, and I don't think there's anything wrong with people telling me my weaknesses because I'm confident that I also have strengths. But there's a surprising amount of people out there that just think it's a personal affront, or they don't like to admit they have weaknesses, or what have you. And I would contend that if you can become more self-aware, and this is what the research shows, you can, if we see ourselves more clearly, you can be more confident, more creative, make better decisions, build stronger relationships, communicate better, and also be a better leader. That's what the research indicates. Yet only about 15% of people are actually fully self-aware. So let's talk about it, Richie. How would you define self-awareness? I have a clinical definition, but it's, just the clinical definition is pretty close to the way I would think about it. So how would you define self-awareness?
I'm going to work in some phrases that you hate,
Okay.
but a common sense understanding of the reality of how cognizant you are of yourself and the people around you to the point of being well-liked or not, and understanding what it takes to build relationships and fix yourself. So it's kind of a rant there, but
That's pretty close. I mean, the definition that's there's several definitions, but most common definition is the difference between how we see ourselves versus how others see us. I think that's the most common definition. And as I mentioned, only about 15% of people are truly that way. So why is it that you and I have been in corporate world for 30 years, and I don't know how many training sessions you and I have been through, but a lot. And there's a lot of emphasis on like personality testing, Myers-Briggs, DISCs. There's all kinds of different sales training, which also deal with psychological, relationship matching and stuff like that, personality matching. Why is it that there's been so little emphasis? Because if you believe the research, there's a huge payoff in people being more self-aware. Why do you think that corporate America, and I'll use corporate America, but it could be nonprofits, what have you. Why aren't people investing in self-awareness? Why do you think that is?
I think because they potentially believe it conflicts with the exact personality they need to hire to be successful. So if you look at certain types of people, they want you to be competitive, hardworking, dedicated, have a toughness to you, which usually comes with an ego, right? I mean, a lot of successful people, at least in sales, in management, senior management, there's an ego that comes with that. Often an overconfidence, an aggressiveness, a work ethic coupled with belief that you're right and everybody else is wrong. So,
well, before we go any further down that road, I mean, I would agree with you for senior leaders, and I was actually going to bring that up, and maybe salespeople. But what about middle management and worker bees and developers and engineers and people that aren't necessarily associated with bravado and high ego and big personalities? I mean, don't you think it's valuable for them, the real people that do the work, to be more self-aware, to interrelate with people?
Well, that's a mixed bag question, because there's a ton of, say, blue collar jobs where you're just happy to get anyone to say yes. In one of our shows, I remember finding research that they're really having trouble. I guess it was the migrant worker or the immigrant show, where we're having trouble now hiring people to do menial jobs, farming jobs, subcontractor jobs, manual labor jobs. So what are you going to do? Screen more people out with a test? You don't care. This person could be a lunatic, a drunk, not
felon,
no self-awareness. We're going to hire the guy.
Right. And in the era of 3.5% unemployment, that's probably even more of a problem. But I still think that if self-awareness is a huge payoff, it's amazing to me that in my 30 years, I've never had any kind of real self-awareness testing.
Look at the opposite. So now there's a ton of tech jobs, engineering jobs, programming jobs, developer, IT jobs that require high intelligence and a certain training. They're also, I think there's, we have a shortage of 1 million to 2 million positions that require this level of intelligence and training. Although there's still a ton of those people out there. Again, you're not trying to screen them out to see if they're self-aware. So I think we have two ends of the spectrum. There's a ton of blue-collar jobs. You're deathly afraid you'll take anybody, so you're not screening them out. And there's the other end of the spectrum, the really intelligent, IT-trained computer programmers and IT specialists that you're also afraid to screen them out. So I think that's part of the reason.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the types of self-awareness. There's and again, it depends on which research paper you read, but most people identify it as internal and external. So internal self-awareness is your self-awareness to how you are and
To yourself.
to yourself. And external is how you appear to others.
And how you think you appear to those people. For yourself.
Correct. Your self-awareness of how you
Are perceived
by others. Right. And how accurate you are with that. So, and we can talk about our test results at the end of the show. But and there's usually 4 different quadrants or archetypes. Is it archetypes or archetypes?
I like archetypes.
Archetypes. Okay, there's 4 different archetypes, and one is introspectors. So introspectors have high internal and low external.
Not like Clouseau of the Pink Panther.
Not
Oh, that's an inspector.
inspector.
Got it.
Then there's seekers. Seekers have low internal and low external. There's pleasers. Pleasers have low internal and high external. And then there's those that are fully aware, and again, it's a very small percentage that are both. They're high internal and high external. And these are typically fairly well, they're the life of the party, they're well accomplished, they're well liked, they're unusual mixture of being high. So
Wharton graduates?
no, definitely not Wharton graduate. They're high on the internal, and usually low in the external. So, what do you think about that mix of the people? You know a lot of people, Rich, and you constantly remind me that you know a lot more people than I do. So, in your many travels, what is your kind of gut reaction to those archetypes, and who do you mostly hang around with, or have you witnessed in your years?
I see the world as becoming more and more selfish, self-absorbed, and only worried about themselves. You especially see it driving in a car on the road.
No, he's gonna merge in road rage into this.
But you see it everywhere in lines at department stores, running around, lining up, or going through security in airports. Demands at restaurants, overly demanding. Hey, there, my spaghetti sauce is 1 degree lower than it. It's just, it's such a self-absorbed world, only concerned about themselves. I see that growing, and I see that a lot.
Do you think that, before you go on, do you think that's because we're isolated more with technology? We have less personal interactions. We have less practice interacting with others. Do you think that we've talked about that on the social media show, but do you think that is contributing to that siloing of America or of everyone?
Absolutely, with the younger generations, but I'm seeing this with 40, 50, 60-year-olds.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it, sometimes as the older you get, the less patience you have. You've seen it all. You've been there, right, and you have less patience.
I can definitely see that in you.
Thank you. With other folks, it's just what we talk about here. We live near the main line, or you actually live on the main line. And there's a self-entitlement, silver spoon. I was born into important wealth, and I'm better than you. So a lot of it's just, again, ego. I think ego plays into a lot of this.
Remember, I was a Havertown boy born to 2 public school teachers, so I was not a silver spooner.
I still don't consider you a silver spooner, but...
Although that was my CB handle in the 1970s, Silver Spoon.
Really?
Yes. My dad, I was trying to think up a handle. My dad said, how about Silver Spoon? Because you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Of course, we never went to restaurants, and we never stayed in a hotel until I was 19, Sob.
I got the small violin is out.
So back to my original question. The people that you are friends with or associate with in business, do you think they're more introspectors or pleasers? Do you know anyone that's fully self-aware? I don't know that I know anyone that's fully self-aware.
Immediately take the quadrant off of people that are aware of themselves from a standpoint of how it impacts other people.
Right.
So if somebody's egotistical or self-absorbed, which category would that eliminate for them on that list?
Well, it depends. I think you could be egotistical and self-absorbed, but also cognizant of how other people perceive you. So you could be self-aware externally and internally.
I think these
you
people
don't agree with
don't
that?
understand or are aware that they're that way necessarily.
Okay, well that's different. Because there's some people that are just that way.
I don't think they care. I think it's part oblivious, and they just don't care.
Okay.
So that whatever category that eliminates for me, the other group of people I do see a lot are pleasers. I do know a lot of people that are helpful, go out of their way. If you call them up at 2 a.m., and you needed to be picked up on the side of the road because your car broke down, they would. Or you got in trouble, they would lend you money, or they go out of their way to give you advice if you ask them, or make an introduction for you, or whatever. So I do know a lot of pleasers out there. So
pleasers is not in that sense. I mean, this isn't a self-awareness sense in that they're not really sure, they're not confident in who they are, and so they're malleable, like that word, to what other people want them to be. That in that way, they're pleasers. So it's not really like servanthood pleasers. They're more malleable to what other people want them to be so that they will be accepted. Does that make sense? In that way, they're pleasers.
Is that a little fake? Like you're doing things
No,
only
they're
get
exactly. They're
recognition, or
they're not
to get people to like you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly what. They want to be liked so much that they will adapt themselves so that they are liked.
So you always tell me you personally could care less what people think about you.
Correct.
You're going to lead your life the way you want to. You don't care what anybody thinks.
Correct. I am I'll just reveal it now. I'm a low external in my results.
So, gosh, but what's the cause of that? Is it because you truly don't care, or you don't have time to care? I know a lot of people that do care what other people think.
There's a lot of people like that. I would say most people care that. Most people that I know care about what other people think of them, and they're worried about whether it's their reputation or whatever it is, their kids' reputation, their job reputation, how they're perceived and standing in the society, their religious affiliation, how much works they do, how much they give to charity, whatever, their wealth. I mean, there's a lot of people, I would say most people have some level of care in what other people want. And I should have more because I think it would help me. And my story goes back to my first son, who was born with facial deformities and birth defects, and he had no ears, he had a tracheotomy, he had a recessed jaw, and he took a lot of verbal, jarring verbal comments from other kids, and it really hardened me to what other people think. And that's where it kind of changed in my life, where I just said, I don't really care what other people think. And I just kind of adopted that. It's actually been a blessing for my life. But if you're asking me where that came from, that's where it came from for me. Because I think when I was in high school, I did care what other people thought.
Well, your situation is, unique and unfortunate. So that's a tough gauge to use as or measure or as a metric, because usually if you do care about what other people think, you're trying to do the right things, whether it's publicly, professionally, for your family, at the church or school. If you're self-aware to do things to please people because that's part of giving back to society, then you should care in that sense, I would think.
The way I interpret that is I'm a doer, right? So I want you to be judged. I want to be judged on my actual deeds, not what I'm perceived to do. You know what I mean? So I think there's a difference between what I've done and what people think of me. There's a difference.
Do you think caring about what people think of you could alter behavior in a positive way? So, give an example.
I think the negatives outweigh it. For me, the negatives outweigh it because I'd be encumbered. I'd be encumbered by second second guessing what I'm doing to see what other people would do.
But can that make you insensitive? I mean,
Yes, I am insensitive. You know that. I mean, that's a weakness of mine for sure.
So a quick example popped in my head. I was driving somewhere for work.
By the way, it's hot in here. You maybe turn off the air conditioning.
Because it was freezing earlier. You don't sit underneath the thing.
All right, we'll keep going.
So I was in Florida or North Carolina or somewhere in a rent-a-car, lost, looking for a hotel or a business, and I was driving down the left lane.
Sure it wasn't a couple of IPAs from a guy's freezer.
Could have been, or a bottle of Quinta Rubin, and all of a sudden, and the GPS wasn't working. You know, that one they give you that you plug into the cigarette lighter in the car.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I realized I got to make a turn here. But
Right.
I'm in the left lane. I quickly looked in the rearview mirror at both mirrors. I didn't see anything, so I made the right.
Right.
Turns out there was a guy on a bicycle dressed in a suit. And he was maybe just the way he aligned with a tree or something. I didn't see him. So I pull in. As I'm pulling in, about 10 seconds later, somebody's shouting at me.
Right.
And I didn't know why.
Right.
So I park my car, and he starts shouting at me. I go, if you're that tough, why don't you come say that to my face? So he drives up on his bike all the way to me. Clearly, he knew he didn't know who I was either, and I was 100 pounds bigger than him. I'm like, really? You're going to mouth at me for pulling into a parking lot? I'm lost. He goes, dude, you just missed hitting me with no turn signal or no warning. I go, really? Did I do that? He goes, yes, you did. I'm letting you know. I go, okay, listen, I'm sorry I did that. Thank you for making me aware. But also know, if I was a lunatic, I could knock you out right now for, confronting me. He goes, yes, I know. Thank you. and we just pulled away from each other. And I thought, if I didn't care, or if I was a nut, maybe I would have popped the guy, and I'm wrong. So that made me think, it is good to be self-aware and care what people think, because it alters your behavior. In a positive way, I think.
Well, in that case, if you truly did what you thought you did and what is believable that you did, you would be a narcissist not to apologize. So I don't know. I mean, if would that have changed your behavior in advance? That's what I think you're saying is, if you know people will.
Yes, when the guy was shouting at me, I wouldn't have assumed this guy's confronting me. I would have thought.
I would say I would. I mean, almost anyone would. I mean, would you, if you didn't know that there was a guy there you cut off, would you automatically assume, well, it must be something? This guy obviously has a rational reason to be confronting and screaming at me. No one would think that.
I wouldn't have been confrontational at all. I would have
Really?
been. Yeah, because then I think, okay, what did I do? What did I do wrong? This guy is, he's in a business suit on a bike. He wouldn't be going out of his way to confront me. Okay, what did I do? So, I mean, that maybe not the greatest example, but it just popped into my head of something that happened to me where it made me think, and it might alter my behavior in a positive way for society.
Okay.
But you just raised something about narcissism.
Yes.
They are not self-aware.
Right. And that's what I was going to go to next. So in the surveys, senior leaders, CEOs, obviously, but any kind of senior leader in any organization, even churches, by the way, are the least self-aware. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. There is almost no one, because if you're in an organization at lower levels, you're getting annual reviews, and oftentimes your manager's giving you direct feedback on a weekly basis or daily basis even. So you're kind of getting dribs and drabs of self-awareness from someone who knows you well. And obviously we mentioned already with marriage and stuff, you're going to get that. Good friends who are also good people. But in a work setting, I think it can be a little bit more harsh because it's a little bit more business-like. There's money on the line. You're supposed to provide value in exchange for your compensation. But as you might expect, if a CEO, if someone was asked to give feedback on a CEO, he or she may be reluctant to do so because they're afraid of the ramifications of that. So largely senior leaders don't get honest feedback, and therefore they are the least self-aware, which is not a good thing when you think about it from the leadership of our organizations.
It's the opposite of what you would want.
Exactly. And this is something I wanted to bring up to you because you mentioned one of our patrons, Mike Smalls, and I think Mike, and I only worked for him for a couple of months, but Mike did have what I'll call a servant leader type of a mindset. And I've had other managers in my work career that were like that, including my current manager. They really look at it as, I'm here to serve you and to take away barriers or whatever to make your job easier. That's very rare. And I'm wondering, why is that not taught in business schools? Why is the high ego, big personality, why has that propagated into senior leadership across the world, really?
Comes up a lot in self-help books and just things like, get popped up on Salesforce or LinkedIn, rather. These videos pop up, and a lot of it, because LinkedIn's mostly business people, a lot of sales and sales management. There's a lot of these funny videos that pop up ripping sales management. I just saw one today.
Right.
Overbearing, over-demanding, no self-awareness, no remorse, narcissistic, egotistical.
And I would say that is more the norm than the servant leader. Don't you agree? And why is that?
I've had 3 servant leaders in my life, one of them being Mike Smalls, and absolutely get the highest grade of management that I've ever experienced. The other type of management often leads to people quitting.
Right. And probably not even good production because you're worried about, stuff that you shouldn't be worried about instead of working productively.
It's also a reflection of probably their personal life. You look at people, and I've seen it at country clubs and certain restaurants or...
You're making this a socioeconomic thing, but it's not necessarily. I mean, there are definitely
I think it is a lot of time. It is.
No. That's harsh. I don't agree with that. There's plenty of people that have blue collar jobs that are just as,
Well, maybe it's an education thing.
Just as arrogant.
Sometimes if you grow up with tough luck and a tough situation and you're not educated, you're not going to give a crap what anybody thinks. You're going to have that F you attitude, which a lot of these people do.
Right.
So that plays into it, the statistics as well.
Right. But you think, and back to our other conversation, you think because leaders in organizations, performance is valued over interpersonal skills and or self-awareness, you think that's why the majority of the managers are not self-aware and are more of this high ego, big personality stuff as opposed to servants? You think that's why is the emphasis in American culture, especially on performance and bottom line?
I've had some of them tell me, I have to be cold as ice. I have to eliminate emotion from these decisions. I have to do what's right for the company and the bottom line. And I said, really? Well, what if somebody's a family and they're actually doing well? It's a weird perspective that some of these people would execute their grandmother for a dollar bill.
Right.
And that's where I think it crosses the line.
Right. So what are we have a couple minutes left. So what are the ways in which we can all increase our self-awareness? Rich and I took this little quiz, but there's a lot of different things out online that you can become more self-aware. I can tell you one story that when I was coaching basketball for many years, I used to do anonymous surveying of the parents and the players, which is a very good, reality check on if you tell people to give you feedback, but you ask them to put their name on it, they won't tell you the truth. If you set up a Survey Monkey, the Survey Monkey is the one I used to use, and make it anonymous, you'd be surprised at the feedback you get. So I was very disciplined about that. I would survey the parents. I'd ask for no names and feedback and areas of improvement that we could make, that I could make personally. My greatest strengths as a coach and weaknesses as a coach. And it was very informative. There's also, in a business setting, there's 360 reviews. I don't know if you've ever participated in that, but it's good to get other people to give you feedback. I actually, when I served on the board of a Christian school, I actually did the same thing with my fellow trustees. I surveyed them anonymously to see if I should run for a second term.
What'd they say?
They were all saying I should. I ended up not doing it, but I got some good feedback, and it was actually, they were the ones encouraging me to do it when I was leaning towards not doing it. I ended up not doing it because I wanted to go and serve doing the coaching. But anyhow, so what in your life, Rich, how have you become self-aware? Take away the marriage thing, because we all know that we get direct feedback from that.
Well, it's kind of a conflicting answer, because in order to be more self-aware, at least externally, you have to care, right? So it's, if you, and I don't mean this as an affront to you, but think about.
No, I'm talking about internally. Internally is just as important as externally.
Well, I think
you're placing a lot of emphasis on the
I
external.
know. I think
it's
you have
important
to care. You actually have to care about something, whether it's yourself or others. You have to have the ability to forgive yourself. You have to have the ability to apologize to others. If you don't care either way, internally or externally, I think that's a big problem. Now, is that intrinsic to the person's personality anyway? Can you get someone to start to care or be more self-aware? I think you can, but sometimes it's ego, and sometimes it's existing personality traits that you can't overcome. But I honestly don't know how to fix that, because I'm apparently an oblivious dope.
So let's move into that as we close the show. So as I mentioned earlier, Rich and I both did this one self-awareness quiz. And as part of this test, you took 14 questions. It was very easy to do. And then you had to email those results or those questions to someone that knows you well. In this case, we both did our spouses, and they answered them, and then they compiled the results. So I'll go first. And with the help of my wife, I am an introspector, okay? And that is internal self-awareness high. So I have I'm very clear on who I am, my inner values, my passions, my aspirations, ideal environments, patterns, reactions, including strengths and weakness, and impact on others. This is a very good thing to have, and so you have a very good thing. Where I'm not, second type of insight is external self-awareness. And let me explain here. Where is it? Sorry, I'm losing my place. I have room to improve. You could be making a bad impression, or an impression that simply isn't reflective of who you really are. So actually, one of my daughters told me that her friend said that I'm, quote, intimidating. This was back in high school. And my daughter thought, that's ridiculous. He's my dad. Of course, she didn't see me as that, but I've been told by other people that I can be intimidating. Now, I'm obviously not physically intimidating.
No, not even close.
No, but I
obviously
come off with my personality
jerky,
as not jerky, intimidating. That's the word.
Insensitive.
I definitely can be insensitive.
Hard ass.
Yeah, maybe black and white. There's all kinds of different
dead
things. Serious. I have lots of, and this is my strength, right? My strength is I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to admit my strengths and weaknesses, and I'm very pragmatic about it. But there's a lot of them. I can be judgmental. I can be impatient. I can be
demanding.
I can have. I'd say I have very
unreasonable.
I have very high expectations of myself and others. I agree with all this, but I also have a lot of strengths, which we probably won't have any time for.
We have no time for me to repeat those.
Right. But anyhow, let me just finish reading.
You're a nice guy.
No, I don't know about that. You might be experiencing stress or strain in your work and personal relationship, whether you know it or not. And that's something that I took to heart, because if you're not tuned in to how other people see you and view you, I admit that there could be stress associated with that I'm not even factoring in. You know what I mean? That's in my life because of the way they react to me, that I could change if I was more aware of them and how I'm coming off to them. And that might help me. You know what I mean? So there's a benefit to, I agree, I should be more self-aware externally. And actually, it says, because introspectors see their intentions and actions differently than other people do, you could also feel misunderstood. So, in this libertarian realm, I often feel misunderstood, but maybe it's just my external self-awareness. All right, so Richie, what did your test results come up with, and what was your
Can I give you a
archetype?
hug? Can I give you a hug first?
No hug. We're too far apart.
Okay, so I am an oblivious dope across the board.
What's your archetype?
I am a seeker.
Seeker, okay.
I have no self-awareness, and I have no external awareness. Now, here's the thing.
Now, I've known you for now. We the caveat here, right? This is a 14 quiz thing. It's not meant to be comprehensive. I happen to think mine was pretty accurate. I'm not saying yours is accurate, and I've known you for 40 years. I would say that your external self-awareness is higher than your internal self-awareness. And again, that's just my personal...
That's what I thought. So I thought I would get and what would that be? If I had low self-awareness but high external.
I just threw it down, but hold on a second. You talk.
Okay, folks. So anyway, I've known Mark for actually 43 years, 44 years, and he's a nice guy. He's not as intimidating anymore. As his wife once said, he has a slight build. Okay, here he's back.
You are a pleaser. You are a pleaser.
I thought I was so
you're a pleaser. You have low internal and high external.
That's what I would have thought I would have been.
Right.
But I was pretty hard on myself on the quick 14-question quiz, and my wife will be easily just as hard on me. I think
you do care more about what other people think of you than maybe you should.
I probably care too much. I do try to please and serve and say yes to everything, which is a fault of mine.
And you like to be liked.
I prefer to be liked.
We've joked about it on this show that you sometimes take the middle road because you like to be liked by everyone.
I don't want to. I don't want to piss people off. I don't want them. Yeah, I like the middle road. I mean, but am I aware of that, or do I just do it? Maybe I'm not aware that I'm doing it. Maybe that's the issue. I'm doing it, but I'm not aware I'm doing it. Maybe it's a self-esteem thing, and I want to make sure people like me. So I thought that quiz didn't accurately reflect what I am, but
or you could just not be self-aware. It's one or the other.
It's one or the other. Maybe I am one of the 15%. No, but I believe that I am not self-aware of my personal well-being and what's best for me and all that. I agree with that. But hey, look, I can only, I'm a big, fat, bald Pollock who's losing his eyesight and his hearing, and my lower back's bad. But I get asked all the time to attend events. So that to me shows that I am likable.
Yeah,
People
you
want
are.
me around for whatever reason.
It's the only reason I asked you to do the podcast.
Exactly. So, yeah, I thought the quiz was a little off with me, but I got to ask my wife how she filled it out, because if I'm for me, I just viewed me as being an oblivious dope if I'm the lowest quadrant on the bottom left.
I don't think so, though. I mean, I think the quiz was somewhat accurate. Sorry, somewhat accurate for me, and I'm sure that it could be improved upon. And I think that I took a personality profile. I forget what, I think it was DISC, DISC, a number of years ago, and I remember reading the feedback, and it said. And I gave it to my wife, and I was kind of taking the tack that, this is probably not that accurate. And I gave it to her, and she read it, and she's like, that's exactly you. So I think we all have a long way to go, except for 15%, according to the research, in self-awareness. And I think we all could, be improved by getting people around us that know us best to take the time to tell us what our weaknesses are. And I think a lot of people would be better served if they could take constructive criticism. And I think a lot of people are reluctant to give corrective criticism because they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I think it's a problem in our society. It's kind of like our society doesn't like to talk about money either. It's another problem our society has. I think we should talk more about strengths and weaknesses of people, knowing that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. I think we'd all be better served. What do you think as closing comments, Richie?
I think you're a great guy.
Who doesn't care enough about what other people think.
Doesn't care about anybody else.
That's not true. I don't care what other people think. I like to be. I'm a doer.
Changing.
I'm a doer.
Don't change.
I'm a doer.
Stay the same. Stay with me in the 15% of humans that are not aware.
All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. It was a little bit different this week, but make sure you listen next episode. We're going to have a guest in the studio. One of our patrons, Chris Barbie, is going to join us in studio to talk about political correctness run amok. And we have tons and tons of examples. We're going to try to focus the episode on the ones that are most egregious in today's society and harmful to our way of life. It should be fun and lively, and as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.
True love won't say goodbye. True love.